coming up next.
By now, most people understand for body fitness that you need to, well, you don't necessarily have to go to a gym. You can play tennis, you can go swimming, you can walk your dog. People understand that you need to move to keep your body functioning at the correct level. Brain fitness, for a prevention point of view, because a lot of these diseases for the elderly and a lot of the mental diseases, what we see these days, you can prevent and you can even optimize your brain. The training program I develop is to help people to upgrade their brain, because I'm convinced that anyone can do and be much, much more than where they're often limited to. Because emotions are data, they're signals telling you something about yourself, which we, and again, no fault, but it's we, but which society has told us not to listen to.
Welcome to Faith Over Addiction podcast, where the chains of fixing and striving are broken and joy is rediscovered in Christ. You're here because you know there's more for you, a life beyond addiction's chaos, rooted in God's peace and promises. This is the place where Christian women like you learn to release the weight of fixing and striving and instead lean into God's strength to create a home filled with love, grace, and hope. She is clothed with strength and dignity. Proverbs 31:25. That's you. You may not feel like it yet, but you are stronger than you know. And God has so much more for you than carrying someone else's addiction. Here, we'll uncover how to set healthy boundaries with love and a little humor. Find resilience and grace in the messy moments of life. Celebrate small victories and embrace joy like never before. Lean into God's promises for restoration and strength, because He's not done with your story or your loved ones. This is your invitation to rise up, embrace your worth in God's kingdom, and take back what's been stolen by addiction: your peace, your joy, your future. Your faith is the foundation, and your boundaries are the bridge, and God's truth is your guide. I'm Tanya Gioia, your host and fellow traveler on this journey through the chaos of addiction. I'm here to cheer you on, equip you with tools that work, and share the truth that's changed my life. The joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. Together, we'll uncover how to create safe, loving space for healing, starting with your own heart and home. By setting boundaries, trusting God's plan, and embracing His truth, you can reclaim your joy, your peace, and your family's future. Then you will be able to stand firm for your family and legacy as a kingdom daughter, a woman who can laugh at the days to come, knowing her identity is secure in Christ. So grab a cup of coffee or tea and get comfortable. Let's walk this journey together. We're about to take back what's been stolen, create a safe, healing space for you and your family, and rediscover the joy God has waiting for you. Welcome to Faith Over Addiction. We are meeting with Arnold Beekes today, and we're going to learn a little bit more about his story and what brought him to this platform. So Arnold, tell us a little bit more about who you are and where you are and what you do.
I'm Arnold Beekes, and I'm currently located in Romania, in a city called Cluj-Napoca, which is the second largest city in the country. But I am not Romanian. I have a Dutch passport, so I live here now for a year. So that's why I'm here. And what I'm doing, I'm introducing brain fitness to the world, and I hope that brain fitness becomes just as important as body fitness.
So tell us a little bit more about what brain fitness is.
Well, by now, most people understand for body fitness that you need to, well, you don't necessarily have to go to a gym. You can play tennis, you can go swimming, you can walk your dog. People understand that you need to move to keep your body functioning at the correct level. And that you preferably need to do something every day. Something like that. And it has a, now let me say for the body, it has a prevention aspect, because after the age of 30, your body starts to decline. Your strength, your endurance, everything. But first it's slowly, yeah, you don't notice it, but by the time you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s, it goes faster and faster if you do nothing. Yeah? The same applies to your brain. After the age of 30, your brain first slowly starts to degrade and then much faster up to that by in your 70s, 80s, a lot of people have problems with Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson. But a lot of that stuff can be prevented. Just like with your body. Yeah, for the last 8 years, I took care of my mother. She had dementia and Parkinson. She was in her 80s and 90s when I took care of her. For instance, but she also had no strength. So if she couldn't even open a jar of jam. So, but that's because she didn't exercise. Right? That is not necessary. So that is not like any person in the 90s cannot open a jar of jam. If you've been training, you can open a jar of jam. So there is a prevention part to that. But there's also an optimization part of that. Yeah, look at well, elite sports guy, men and women. They can do incredible things because they have been training. Well, I've set up brain fitness for a prevention point of view, because a lot of these diseases for the elderly and a lot of the mental diseases, what we see these days, you can prevent, and you can even optimize your brain. The training program I develop is to help people to upgrade their brain, because I'm convinced that anyone can do and be much, much more than where they're often limited to.
So a lot of folks who are listening to this live with someone who's dealing with addiction, and they often feel like they are under a black cloud, that they wake up in the morning and wonder, oh, what's going to happen today, and how bad is it going to be, and what am I going to have to clean up? How do they switch their thinking? Because their thinking is within their control. If I'm hearing what you're saying, Arnold, their thinking and how they choose to think and what they think about is within their control. How do they start building fitness for themselves?
Because of a daily ritual and out of research, one of the main things to keep your brain fit is to work on something which is purposeful, complex, and or challenging.
So they're caught up in this rotation of woe is me, woe is me. How do you begin to break that cycle? How do you begin to look at something that is challenging when you feel like your life is falling apart?
I would like to, I'm very sorry about that, but there are many, many people these days who are feeling like that. Right?
Yes. Yes.
There is, the latest statistics is that 12 billion work days are lost through depression and anxiety at the cost of $1 trillion. So this mental and emotional dis-ease is impacting a lot of people. And one of the main reasons, I would say, is that, and again, that is also not their fault. I would like to stress what I'm doing is like, I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not saying it's your fault, because I was in, well, not from addiction, but from being, they're not living their own life. They're living someone else's life. What I mean by that is that from the moment we are born, when are we a good baby? When are we a good kid? When we do exactly what our parents tell us to do. Then we go to primary school. When are we a good student? When we do exactly what the teacher tells us to do. Then we go to high school, same story. University, same stories. And vocational training, well, you don't call them teachers, you call them professors or whatever. Same story. When are you a good student? When you do exactly what they tell you to do. Then you start to work. So you're 20 something, you start to work. When are you a good employee? When you do exactly what your boss tells you to do.
Mm-hmm.
By the time we are 20, 25, and this is true for almost all people, not everybody, but almost all people, it was certainly for me, the only thing what you have learned is to live someone else's life. You're living the life of your parents, of your teachers, of your bosses, and maybe even of your spouse.
How do we begin to live our own lives?
Well, number one, by being aware that you live someone else's life.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. It's the awareness. You see, the awareness already touches you. It's like you got to be aware that, yeah, holy moly, I'm only doing what other people tell me to do. Yeah, and
Yes.
I'm pretty good at it. For me, there was a huge moment when I was beginning of my 40s when I first took a coach, and I just, well, I was really in a mess because I was in a divorce. I lost my job. My father had died, so everything would, and well, I most likely won't have a house anymore. So, and I was really ranting to him, is like, I don't want this anymore. I don't want this anymore. I don't want this anymore. Huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he asked, but Arnold, what do you want?
It's the hard question, right? Because you've been, let me pick back up on this. If I heard you from the first part, you have been rewarded for thinking like your parents think, for thinking like your political party thinks, for thinking like your church or religion thinks. You've been rewarded for that. And who doesn't want to be rewarded? So we keep getting, I'm going to call it, and you may tell me I'm wrong, we keep getting these rewards that are dopamine hits. And then if we say, I don't want to do like they do, what happens to our community, our society, our connections?
Yeah, that is exactly right. It's like I call that situation living someone else's life. I call it fitting in. We are
Mm.
fitting in. We're fitting into the community, the society, the work, our family. We're fitting in. It's like, oh, if I do exactly what they want me to do, I have no problems.
I perceive that I have no problems, right? But am I happy? If I'm doing what you tell me to do, if I'm part of your system, am I happy?
You are superficially happy, and you might even pretend that you are happy because that's how you're supposed to react. Yeah?
Right, right. I've got my
So
needs met. I have a house, I have a spouse, I have whatever I need, and I'm pretending that things are okay. But when you went to your coach and you said, I don't want this, I don't want this, you've had the three crises, death, divorce, and possible loss of job and possible loss of domicile. What were you feeling at that point?
well, totally confused because I I had a very very senior position in the business world, and now I was nothing, and I can express myself quite easily. But when he asked that question, he was the first person in my life ever asked me that question, Arnold, what do you want?
And you were in your 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah, so nobody had ever asked you that before. They might have asked you, did they ask? I know in the States we ask kids all the time, what do you want to be when you grow up? We don't say, what do you
Well,
want?
that question was not asked in my family.
Yeah.
My father was a military officer. He was extremely authoritarian, so he never asked anything.
And you went into the military too.
No, I was in conscription because when I was supposed to be when I was 18, there wasn't the Netherlands conscription, so I had to go in the army for a certain period.
Mm-hmm.
That's changed now, but that was when I didn't have to go at 18. I could finish my university, and then I still had to go into the army. Yeah? But my father he was a professional, he was an officer in the army. So he never asked anything. He always told you what to do.
Got it. Got
Yeah?
it. So
So
how
when
in
that
your
coach asked me that question, Arnold, what do you want? I was literally lost for words.
Yes. And that just to bring it home, Arnold, that's where most of my audience is. They've been supporting either a child, a spouse, a parent, or somebody for so long, like you said, they're not living their life. And if you ask them what they want, if you ask them what they wanted for dinner, they would probably go and ask the other person what they wanted. It's that confusing. So tell us
Yeah,
how you began to get out.
and that is exactly how you have to build your whole life from that point to try to answer that question. Is like, who am I? What do I want to do? What do I like to do? How do I want to contribute? All these questions, which for most people are not asked and discussed,
Mm-hmm.
you have to figure out. So you have to see yourself as a discoverer, as an explorer. Is like, yeah, is like, oh, I got to figure these things. And not only because I came from the corporate business world, I the person I say, well, we talk about it was in the business world is only mental. It's only thinking. It's only in your head. Yeah?
Right. Right.
Emotions are not part of the business world. If there are emotions, you're fired. Yes, there was
Right.
nothing
Right.
about what I call mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, environmental, and social aspects. Out of that, only the mental is addressed. So it was pretty good at the mental, but emotions, we don't do emotions. So it like yeah.
It
So
is so much like my audience. So if you're in a world of addiction, you are covering up things. You don't have emotions. If you say, I'm angry or I'm sad, or I thought that I saw you be angry or sad, you're told that's not true. We're all happy. Everything's okay. And that's the picture you paint for the world. So you're talking exactly to my audience. How did you begin to decondition this, to uncondition this, to find yourself again?
well, I'm happy you use that word. I'm using the word unconditioning because it is conditioning. Yeah, we have been conditioned by parents, the education system, the business system, the government. Everything is conditioned us to be that. Well, I call it obedient person. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And just care and do what other people expect you to do and totally ignore yourself, ignore your feelings, yeah, ignore your thinking, yeah, well, ignore your wants from your body, yeah. So it's and spiritual. I I know your audience is Christian, but I was like spirituality. I could hardly write the word. I had no clue what it was. Yeah,
Yes, yes, yes,
yeah.
yes. Absolutely.
So I start to be an explorer. I'm like, yeah, but what is that? And what does it entail? And how does it work? And what are all these guys doing? And so for me, is what I say to people is three things as a starting point, because I think that is where your question amounts to, is like, number one, that this is the situation. It's not your fault.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we've taken a level of shame off, right? It's not my fault. So then how do I step in and
The
do
number
something
two,
different?
the step number two, I said there were three. Yeah? The step number two is be a beginner.
I love it. So I get to start again.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. it's like I had to figure out what spirituality is about. I had to really, really get in touch with my own emotions, where I'd been working on 40 years to suppress them.
Got it. How did that go? Was that scary? Was that sad?
Especially it was difficult because the moment something like a thing pops up, oh, boom, suppress it.
Right.
So number one, you gotta get rid of that automatic behavior, but that takes a time because in my case it was a habit of more than 40 years. So it like first few cases you don't notice it, but then slowly over time you start to notice it, and then it's like, oh yeah, oh yeah, I'm really feeling lousy. I have a headache. I have huge headaches throughout my life.
Mm.
I think it's also physical, which they finally detected here in a brain clinic in, out of all places, Romania. But it like, oh yeah, I'm feeling lousy, sad.
Mm.
Why is that?
Or what is it? I mean, did you have to work
Where
through
is
some
it coming
grief?
from? What does
Yeah.
it say to me? What is the message? What is causing that? And that's why I say you got to be a beginner. It's like, yeah, and learning to get to know myself is like, oh, oh, that's why I'm like, well, I can even share something. I'm not 40 anymore. I'm 66. So, but it's like right now I feel tears burning in my eyes when I read about artists and their life and their work and what they're doing and the challenges and everything. I'm trying to figure out is like, why do I feel tears popping up?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it didn't happen once. It happened many, many times lately. And I'm like, okay, but I think I'm an artist as well, but it's never been expressed.
So something that you wanted to express is causing you some grief or sadness.
Yeah. So it's an ongoing thing to learn to listen to all these signals, because emotions are data. They're signals telling you something about yourself, which we, and again, no fault, but it's we, but which society has told us not to listen to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that is the process where you start to listen to. It's like, oh, what is it? What is causing that? Oh, oh, I'm touched by someone who said something to me what was not nice and not correct. So, oh, okay. Oh, maybe I'm even angry. So it's like, yeah,
Being a beginner, figuring out like a child would, what are the feelings I'm having?
yeah.
Oh.
And that is true for everything. And so I was trying new things. I became part of a spiritual organization, and I'm well with all kinds of, I would call it rituals and habit. And I'm like, oh, is that like that? And like that. And I started. So it like it's with anything. It's like, well, go and try. It's like, oh, I'm going to try that, and I'm going to try some different sports and maybe some different hobbies, and let's connect with other people. Because, well, the moment, well, especially I had a very the senior position in business, which means, well, everybody likes you just because you're the boss. Yeah, so it's like,
Mhm,
yeah,
mhm.
it's not real. Yeah, so it's like, so, but you have friends and colleagues who you like, but the moment you're kicked out, and everybody says, we stay in touch, and after a few weeks, you're nothing anymore. So it like,
Right. It was all about the position. It was
yeah,
all about the performance that you did.
yeah, the outer expectations and everything, and people liked you because of your position. They didn't like me because I'm Arnold.
Right, right. Well,
It,
and partly because you didn't know who Arnold was, right?
Yeah, but I'm in an environment with everybody is nobody knows who they are.
Yes, it's a hard struggle to get there. It is. It
Yeah.
is.
So
What is the third step? So it's not
the
your
third
fault to
step
be a
is
beginner.
that what I already a little bit preluded to is that we gotta learn to live inside out instead of outside in.
Explain that. I love that, but explain it for our listeners.
By constantly meeting expectations of other people, by constantly yeah. When I was a child and at home and I migrated to school, when my father came home, he's like, oh, how is he? How is his temper? How is his humor? Is he good or not? Whatever. So I was sensing like he is, and that sensing determined what I would say or do.
Mm-hmm. Very much like my audience. They can tell if their person has been using drugs or alcohol or is in a media stupor within 2 seconds of that person coming home. And maybe you leave the room, maybe you stay in the room, maybe you say something nice, maybe you don't say anything at all. Brilliant. Brilliant.
So, but the same is true for your boss. The same is true for your colleagues. The same is true for that. It's like, oh, there, well, I cannot say that. It's like, yeah, do you agree with it? Yeah, I agree with it. Well, you think, well, the plan is totally rubbish, but you have to say that. Yeah, so,
Right. To get along.
yes. So you're constantly playing a role.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you're sensing like, oh, I can say that, or I can't say that, or wait until the next time. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that is what I call, yeah, but right now, I told you, well, I'm a bit older than most people, but it's like when I see now teenagers, people in the 20s, when they go to university, go to their work, really, they all look the same. They get the same clothes. They get the same haircut. They get the same makeup. They get here in Romania, well, it's like I think it's extremely sad. It's like teenagers, whatever. The whole face is makeup. When I go to a drugstore, there are 10, 12 teenagers in line waiting to buy lipstick and makeup.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is outside in living is like, hey, I cannot show my pimples or anything, or the color of my lips are not good, so I gotta make them red. That's outside in living. It's outside in living. Watch, and I see it even move to the elderly now. When they walk to the bus or to the school or to the office, it's, they walk with this in their hands.
Yes. Or like this.
Yeah, well, which is even more dangerous. But it's like you have a coat, you have a bag, yeah.
Uh-huh. Absolutely.
They're just copying the behavior of everybody else because everybody else is like you're supposed to keep it in your hand.
And Arnold, for those who are listening, he's showing his phone that you shouldn't put it in your bag, you shouldn't put it in your coat, you need to keep it in your hand because there might be an emergency that you need to deal with right that minute.
Well, the emergency is that your friend sends a message and you got to like it very fast.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the emergency. Yes, yeah. And so it like we're constantly looking like, how do I look for the outside world?
Mm-hmm. What is my look? What is my look? What's being shown rather than what's my integrity? What's my authenticity on the inside?
Yeah.
So how do you use brain
So
fitness?
coming back to your question was that is what I call outside in living. Is like I respond to what the outside world demands of me,
Which makes me sick, which makes me unhealthy, which makes me not
which
aware of
makes
what
me
I'm feeling.
basically a robot.
Got it. How does brain fitness change all this? What have you developed that changes and solve this problem?
I help people to live from the inside out. Yeah? And inside out living is based on, who am I? What do I want to do? What do I want to say? What do I want to contribute? What kind of work do I want to do? Who are the type of people I want to hang out with?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? So, and that is that huge shift, which I must say, intentionally, people don't want you to think about these things because they want you to be a servant. They want you to be a very conformist, obedient person. Eh? And by laying is like, I'm Tanya and I want to do this. Who told you that you can think for yourself?
Or that's even possible, or that you even have the skills to do that. I mean, it can get really ugly, in there too.
Yeah. So that is the switch where I help people, like, with all these aspects, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, environmentally, socially, to make that shift and build a life where you are in charge versus other people are in charge. So instead of living someone else's life, you start to live your own life.
And let's circle back to where we started. How does this help us as we step into our more senior adult years to prevent Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all of those things? How does this help us work through those pieces?
Because by keeping our brain really active rather than merely where you constantly keep on learning, growing, exploring, changing, trying things, rather than just be that robot who just repeatedly does the same thing over and over and over again. Where I lived in the Netherlands, whatever, I could tell exactly, like, oh, not, I don't know which month is it? Oh, they will go on holiday now. Oh, what are they gonna do then? Oh, there's a party there. Oh, they will do this. Oh, now they go to the supermarket. Like, everything is totally. I could figure out that someone else's life is like, oh, no, then they will do this. Huh? So it's from that moment in 20, we hardly change. Why is that? A little bit. Well, sometimes you get it on your work, a new training or a new application you have to learn, but they're very small changes. So
Mm-hmm.
we continue doing. So we are on the, I would say, on the automatic pilot. Like
Mm-hmm.
on a plane, you push a button and then the plane flies itself.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so that is how we live our lives, because that is what we do. And the older we get and the more we do it, is that the stronger that habits get.
So it is a habit, right? It's a
Yes.
habit to think that way and to behave that way. What are some simple things, not to, most of my audience is not going to pack up and move to another country or decide they're going to live in another place. But what are some simple things they can
Which
start
would
to
be a good
do?
thing to do, by the way.
Yes, I completely agree. What are some simple things they could do today in the next week or so to start living from the inside out instead of from the outside in?
Well, to build upon that, I would say is that start with every situation there is start to figure out, how do you feel? Not how does the other person feel?
How do I feel?
Exactly. And this question repeats a gazillion times per day, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
we're, and your audience is like automatically like, oh, I'm supposed to do this, I'm supposed to do this. And wait a minute, but what do I want?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So listen to your own emotion. But then the next step, which is, I think, the most crucial step, be kind to yourself.
I love that because we are so hard on ourselves, aren't we? We're our own worst critic.
Well, isn't that strange? We literally have a voice inside of ourselves, and everybody knows we call it the inner critic. We don't call it the inner cheerleader.
I know. I want an inner cheerleader. Can I have an inner cheerleader instead?
You can work on it. Yeah, so isn't that weird?
I know that we're born with this whole negative, I'm not doing well, it's not okay, I'm not doing the right thing, nobody will
I'm
love
not good
me,
enough.
blah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
not good enough. All those things.
yeah. So, but what I tell you, that is intentionally the conditioning which is happening in our world. Because when you're in fear, when you have the feeling that you're not good enough, you're easy to be controlled.
Yes. Yes. That's true. That's true. So how
So
are you kind to yourself? What are some things that you do, or what are some things that you encourage people around you to do
I
to be kind?
intentionally, and I'm just living by myself here in an apartment in Romania. I don't speak the language. I know nobody. Yeah, so I'm just there in that. Yeah, so I really got to take care of myself. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But what does it mean is that literally, when I did something good, whatever, I say, I literally do this. I give myself a tap on the shoulder.
I love it. I love it. I do that
Yeah?
with some coaching clients. I say, put your left hand out, cross it over your shoulder, and now give yourself a pat. Good.
I'm doing that, I would say, almost daily.
Great. Great.
Yeah?
That's
The other
awesome.
thing is when I finish something or yeah, well, that happened yesterday. I finished a layout for a book which I'm going to write. Is like I literally was like, yeah.
For those who are listening, he's raising his hands in victory, saying, yes, yes, I've done it. Woohoo.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's going to be a real challenge. I've written a couple of books before, but this is going to be my first mostly fiction book. Yeah, so I've written non-fiction, and so it's really like, yeah, but I love it. It really sounds exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're celebrating yourself. You're not waiting for somebody else to tell you it's okay. You know that
Because
it's good.
again, I'm living from the inside out. I don't wait until to be happy until Tanya says, "Oh, Arnold, that was good."
Yeah, no, you say, Arnold, that was good.
Yeah, yeah, but that is
Awesome.
really essential. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, those are two things that people can do for themselves today. You know, when you get the dishwasher loaded, or when you finish work today, you are done something that needed to be done, you can raise your hands and go, yay, I did it.
Yeah. And a last thing I would like to add to that is, which is also not very common, is allow yourself to be curious.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
How are you
curious,
curious?
like I
Yeah.
was always fascinated by the archaeology of the Egyptian pyramids. Let's study something. Well, watch documentaries, buy a magazine, look at the YouTube movie. Or I'm interested in, why are bees declining? What's happening to bees? What's the role of bees anyway? It's like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be a goal. You doesn't have to get a performance. You don't need to earn money with it. It's just like, I'm fascinated by bees.
Just let yourself be curious. Why
Yeah,
is that happening? Why is that
yeah.
happening? Arnold, this is awesome. Where can listeners find more about you? Where have you got your books, website? Where can we learn more about you and brain fitness?
Well, the most easy part is my website. It's called braingym.fitness.
Mm-hmm.
And there I have two types of products. I have a training program, which is a 15-week training program to help you from fitting in to flying out, where there are 15 sessions, weekly sessions of 90 minutes, and then in between, you're supposed to work on yourself. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then for a week, and then we have another session and another session where we cover everything. Yeah? Mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, environmental, social. Yeah? Um, I have some master classes, which are basically recorded videos where I talk about a specific topic, like your uniqueness, everything around uniqueness, how you figure out your own uniqueness, about relationships, about aging, about dealing with emotions. So all of those things are just for a specific topic. So the training program and the master classes, and if they can sign up for that. If they still have any questions or say they just want to talk to me for the time, my agenda's there, so they can book a meeting with me.
Fantastic. Arnold, I can't thank you enough. And this brings it into reality that it is not just addiction that causes us to lose ourselves. We can be in situations, like you said, lining up to say, hey, I want the makeup to look like everybody else. Or in my case, where we are in the country of, it's snowing, so everybody goes skiing or we go cross country skiing. And some people don't care for that. Some people don't care for the cold. Maybe it's time to move to Florida. Who knows? To make that shift I love how you say your own uniqueness and your unconditioning. So Arnold, I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Faith Over Addiction podcast. Remember, nothing changes until something changes. Today is your day to step out in faith and make a difference. You are a daughter of the King, a woman who can spark incredible ripple effects of hope and healing, not just in your own life, but in your family, your community, and God's kingdom. If this episode encouraged you, bless someone else by sharing it. Send it to a friend who needs a little hope, or post it on Instagram and tag me. I'd love to hear what resonated most with you. And hey, if you're ready to reclaim your God-given identity and create a safe, loving space for yourself and those you care about, let's talk. Book a quick call with me today, and I'd love to hear your story and help you take the next step. Oh, and don't forget to head over to Apple Podcasts, search for Faith Over Addiction, and leave me a review. Your feedback not only makes my day, but helps other women find this podcast and step into freedom too. You are strong, you are loved, and the joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. Until next time, keep walking boldly into the life God has for you.